Hi again, I'm Jack Lessenberry, and welcome to the latest episode of my podcast. I've been doing journalism of various kinds since we used typewriters to write and edited audio tapes with an X-Acto knife. I've pretty much done everything from being a roving foreign correspondent to a public radio news analyst and a city magazine editor. I've interviewed Gerald Ford about Watergate, Jack Kevorkian about suicide, and more governors and senators than I want to admit. But what I really want to do on this podcast is tell and share interesting stories with you, and getting people to tell stories that reveal sides of themselves that you might never know. I also think I have a pretty good grasp of how Michigan and how government work. And for those of you who have been fans of my daily radio essays, they'll be here too. So make sure to listen as often as you possibly can. And remember, there's no charge for listening twice. And please follow me also on my blog, Lessenberry Inc., I-N-K like inkpen.com. Well, today we're joined by a young man and his father, neither of whom ever had a film course in their lives and who didn't know they couldn't possibly make an award-winning documentary film, so they did. Luft Gangster, a fascinating movie about the life of Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson, a member of the legendary Tuskegee Airmen who battled Nazis in the skies over Europe and racism at home in Detroit. Now, filmmaker Mike and his father Sheldon Rott operate Dynasty Media Network, which is based in Ferndale, Michigan, and have been just given the go-ahead to raise funds for a new movie called Why the Bleep Do They Hate Us?, which intends to take a lighthearted approach to fighting anti-Semitism worldwide. Mike and Sheldon, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jack. Good to be here.
Sure. Mike, you're an older, you were once an Apple computer trainer and store manager, and how in the world did you become a movie maker?
Well, I actually, when I was working at the Apple store, I was teaching the public everything in digital media. Got very good with film production and editing, and later decided, I want to do this full time. This is my dream, my passion, and I wanted to go into business for myself. And,
right.
Given that there were no corporate Apple jobs in Michigan,
right.
and I didn't want to be the manager at the Apple store because then you deal with the returns and this and that. I just
right.
wanted to teach. I wanted to train. I loved creative. So given all that, I went into business for myself and opened up shop in Ferndale. And used those skills that I learned while teaching the public how to edit video and this and that to turn it into what became a actual full-time career in a new.
That's sort of amazing. Now, Sheldon, you have a long background in music and entertainment. You might were able to give him any advice?
Yeah. Well, actually, the way this film all started was many years ago. I worked with a Tuskegee Airman. And we were together. We traveled together around the city, and he never really talked about his Tuskegee experience. So recently, I was at a function, and they told me there's a Tuskegee Airman that's going to give a lecture. I said, well, I have to be there because I could never get anything
Sure.
from my friend, and I always respected the fact that if he didn't want to talk about it.
It's true of a lot of people who've been in wars.
Yes,
yeah.
and he didn't. So I went to this lecture was Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson, and it was just fascinating. I couldn't believe what he was saying. So I talked to him afterwards. I said, my son opened a studio. I said, it'll be a great idea if you could just meet with my son. Maybe he'll do just a few minute little video, and
sure.
we'll give it to your family. We'll donate it to the Smithsonian. And I talked to Mike, and it was all agreed, and we met, and Mike started filming, and wow. Mike said, what did you tell the Lieutenant Colonel?
Well, Colonel Jefferson was probably about 20 minutes into interviewing him. We were just like, Colonel, do you get a glass of water, anything? You want to take a break? Keep in mind, at the time, he was 93.
Right.
He's going on 98 now in a couple months, and the guy's a machine. He just never stops. Right. So we're interviewing him, and it just keeps talking and talking and talking. I'm feeling bad because he's an older gentleman. And then one story after the next just become more and more interesting. And I said, Colonel, time out. It's like, your life is a movie.
That's right. That's exactly
it. It is a movie.
It really is. He reminded me of Zelig in a way because, he gets shot down. He's in a German prison camp, and then, he gets liberated by Patton, and Patton takes him along to liberate Buchenwald. Was it Buchenwald or Dachau?
It was
Dachau.
Yeah.
So, but then it's so moving because he goes through all these things. He's an authentic hero, and he comes back off the boat. And what happened when he got off the boat back in America?
Well, sadly, his welcome back to the United States, coming down the gangplank off the ship in New York Harbor, was a little white soldier at the bottom of the gangplank saying, "Whites to the right, N-words to the left."
Right.
And after all the hell he'd seen and been through, that was his welcome back to America. And that's the way it was in those days, sadly.
But it's a fascinating movie. I mean, it's not you dug up all sorts of archival shots. You know, this is amazing. Did you have like a multi-million-dollar budget to do this?
He sold his
I should
house.
have had a bigger house.
Actually, Mike financed the film from the proceeds of the sale of his house, plus other money that he had and I had, and it was all worth it. It was such a great feeling because when we screened it, and we were all over the country, we screened it at the National Convention of the Tuskegee Airmen.
Wow.
And after the movie played, a lot of the audience and the people came up to us with tears in their eyes, thanking us for making the film. Well, that's all we needed. We didn't. There was not a lot of money in documentary films, but this was more than money. It was just.
I have to say, it's absolutely compelling. Where can someone see it? I mean, a lot of libraries have it. Is it still being screened?
Well, if you go to luftgangstermovie.com, that's L-U-F-T, luftgangstermovie.com, there's a link where you can rent or purchase the video through our Vimeo page.
Right.
We were on iTunes and Amazon and everywhere else. We've taken that down because we actually just struck a distribution deal for international distribution.
Wow.
So while we were recutting the film, we're condensing it down to a 1-hour television time slot. We have a company that's going to distribute it internationally, and we're excited. We're very excited about that. But there was some reasons in that deal that we wanted to have it down from iTunes and Amazon and everywhere else. But if you go to the webpage, luftgangstermovie.com, it's on Vimeo. You can see it today.
By the way, Luft Gangster, Luft is air in German, and that's what the Germans called pilots, our pilots, because
they were trying to demonize our pilots.
Right.
And they called them Luft Gangsters, air gangsters.
Right.
And they said that our pilots were let out of jail so they could fly airplanes and they could kill little children and
Right.
women.
jails and
And this-
mental institutions. Yeah.
And this was how they were trying. And we did mention this in the film, and we asked Lieutenant Colonel, well, how did you feel about being called air gangsters? He says, well, if they spent the time to make up this program to demonize us, we must have been doing something right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they were.
If you get a nickname, you're doing something.
Now, by the way, the subtitle of the film is "Memoirs of a Second-Class Hero."
Yes.
Tell us about what is that about?
Well, it is. He is unquestionably a hero that was treated like a second-class citizen.
Right.
There's nothing more to it than that. It's that his memoirs, he was treated as a second-class citizen, and he is unquestionably, and all those guys from the Tuskegee Airmen were just.
Now,
absolutely
belatedly, that
heroes.
was recognized, right? Wasn't he invited to the White House?
Yes, actually, the Tuskegee Airmen, they received the Congressional Gold Medal as a unit, and Colonel Jefferson, and it's in the film, it's part of our kind of grand finale segments in the end of the film, but he gave a speech before Congress and the Senate right when they received the Congressional Gold Medal. Yeah, it was amazing. And I think, sticking with Washington, I think the moment that I really realized that, hey, we're doing all this effort and this is 100% worth it, we were invited to speak to screen the film at the National Archives and Records Administration in Washington,
Wow.
D.C. for the U.S. Association of Former Members of Congress.
Wow.
So I'm sitting there pinching myself thinking...
You're a long way from 9 Mile Road.
This is... yeah, we're a long way from Ferndale, right?
Yeah.
And the historical impact of the film is something that we're going to be most proud of because that'll be there long after we're gone. And the fact that the National Archives not only wanted us to screen it, they flew us out there and put us up. They valued what we did, and that's the United States National Archives. That was when I knew that we did something that's going to be around
This is a film for eternity, really. Because no one. By the way, this is funny because I don't want to give everything in the movie away. But after I first heard about this, I mentioned it, and I saw Luft Gangster. I mentioned it to a friend. He said, "Oh yeah, I know about them. I saw Red Tails." And what does Colonel Jefferson say about that? There's a great scene in the film.
Yeah, he said, "Anyone see the Red Tails?" And the whole audience, everyone rose their hands, and. He said, "Nothing in that movie is true."
That's true. Well, he would certainly know. Now, I'm excited about your new project. This, why the bleep do they hate us? And obviously, since you started talking about that, we've had some tragedy. We've had, some of these massacres, synagogue in Pittsburgh. But how did you come up with that title?
Well, we actually recently changed the title, so it's "Why the Bleep Do They Hate Me?" Because I'm going to be on camera as the narrator and host and tour guide navigating this simple question. It kind of started, my girlfriend was saying, "You've done so much with social justice and civil rights." She said, with all this anti-Semitism stuff going on right now, why don't you do a movie about your people?
Right.
And I thought, yes. I mean, it's unbelievable. The Anti-Defamation League, they released their statistics that document vandalism, harassment, assaults, and even murders against Jewish people and other ethnic and religious minorities. But what you see in the last 5-6 years is just a steady incline in these numbers, and it has
very frightening.
No indication that it's slowing down at all. So the movie, Why the Bleep Do They Hate Me? We're going to it's a heavy subject, but we're going to do it in a youthful, lighthearted, upbeat way that's going to be, it'll be kind of a jovial, investigative approach where I don't have the answers. I don't know all the research. I don't have all the history. I have the questions, and I'm just a seemingly naive investigative journalist on a mission to find out why the bleep do they hate me.
Well, didn't this stem out?
Completely non-adversarial. I just want to know where these myths and
I think
all this stuff.
I think that could be
Jewish
be highly useful. Now, weren't you in Oklahoma at some time and somebody asked you something that's going to spark this?
Yeah. I lived in Oklahoma for about a year and a half, and a buddy of mine, he just looked me square in the face and he said, "Hey, Mike," he's like, "why does everyone have a problem with Jewish people?" And I didn't have a good answer for him at all. I was like, I don't know. I don't know it's one of those questions that can be in so many layers. You go back thousands of years, there are things that we're discovering that, for example, the church forbade Christians from earning interest off of money lending to other Christians. So that became a natural business for Jews who couldn't get jobs in different areas to fall right into.
And of course, the rulers of the time, they needed somebody to borrow money from.
Yeah, and then, so the question becomes, maybe historically that's where the greedy Jewish whatever kind of stereotypes, maybe that stuff goes back thousands of years. We're going to find out.
In other words, if anyone wants you to pay them back the loan, then they're greedy.
Well, no one ever likes the banker calling back to say, "Hey, where your payment's late?" So.
But have you found so how much? Tell me, have you done a lot of research yet?
We're just getting started. We it's taken several months, and we had some very big news that we've been working towards for a long time. We now have been approved by the board of directors in Los Angeles at the Film Collaborative we've been accepted into their fiscal sponsorship program. What that means for the project is that they are the nonprofit that are taking us in. We are going to be able to receive contributions, backing, and financial support, and offer a tax-deductible tax-exempt status for people who want to support the film.
So it'll be taxed. If let's say our engineer Alec here wants to write you $1 million check, he could deduct that from his taxes.
He could deduct it, absolutely.
That's good.
Which is huge for us, because if we're going to be doing a lot of shooting, a lot of traveling. It's a bigger budget than our first feature film, but it's a much more substantial film in terms of.
Are you doing just in the United States, or are you doing other places as well?
We do intend to shoot in Israel and in Europe. and many places in the United States.
So this will be. Do you have a target date for completion?
Well, I think once we've got our fiscal sponsorship in place, we're going to be fundraising aggressively for the next. That's going to be kind of a full-time job for the next month, and it's going to be something we need to stay on top of with grant writing and everything for several months.
Sure.
But so fundraising, research, pre-production. From that time, I think we will have the whole project done and shot and edited in, I would hope, 10 months to a year.
Yeah,
So your goal
maybe less.
Your goal is maybe by the end of 2020.
Yes. Yeah. By the end of 2020, we'll for sure have that done.
Mm-hmm. Now I've seen you have a very sort of entertaining trailer about the movie. Is there some place we can go on Facebook or on the internet and see it?
Absolutely. If you go to whythebleepfilm.com, it's going to link you right to the Film Collaborative's website with our page on the Film Collaborative website. So whythebleepfilm.com. And yeah, it's a trailer that'll give you kind of a sense of the vibe we're going for. Some of on the back end of the video, there's more of like a historical piece. We're going to dive pretty deep on a lot of.
I like using bleep. Your dad and I can remember back in the days of Richard Nixon's tape, they said expletive deleted. But I think bleep is much better. Yeah. But I'm curious about something that I'm sure your dad may have asked you, your mom, like, how do you make a living doing this stuff?
Corporate video work.
Right.
That's what keeps the lights on right now.
So if, for example, Zing Media Group wanted to commission a film about, promoting Zing Media Group, they could come to you.
Absolutely.
Like for a while, you were doing a Korean financial program.
Yeah.
So you're an all-purpose studio.
Oh yeah, that was an interesting job, and that actually that flexed all of our creative and technical muscles. We shot for a Korean financial news network called MTN. We shot a daily financial broadcast that was that had to start at market close, but had to be broadcast on the air 1 hour later.
Well, there's a 13-hour time difference, right? So yeah.
Yeah. So we shot, edited, and uploaded their MTX files to their network in 1 hour every day.
How's your Korean?
Not good.
We didn't understand a word of what was being said, but
Yeah.
That's okay. I don't want to look at Wall Street anyway.
the interesting thing is we were filming this in Ferndale, Michigan. Then we had people in New York and London, England, Tel Aviv, and Korea.
South Korea.
So we had 5 different locations working on this show, and it was all down to the second.
Yeah.
And it was so intense that I figured, I don't know if I can take this. But five different locations.
They're changing the script, plugging in financial numbers,
translating. They're
translating
and changing script, and it was unbelievable.
We're all in a Google Doc.
But
you can see what everyone's doing. There's 5 people clicking different stuff, and it was just like.
Jack, I wanted to add one thing about, Mike's. Really, his thing is socially conscious films.
Right.
And going back to the Luft Gangster, one thing that Lieutenant Colonel Jefferson said, he was talking about his early years, and they were the first black family in a white neighborhood.
Right.
And he said that there were all different kinds of ethnic people living there.
This is Detroit in the 1920s.
In Detroit on 28th Street.
Yeah.
And he said, he says, the Russian people hated the Polish people. And the Lithuanian people hated the Russian people, and this one hated that one. And he said, and I'm black in this neighborhood. I didn't know what the hell they're talking about.
Right.
It got me thinking, there's been a lot of hate for a lot of years with a lot of different groups. It's not exclusive to one. Because, if they're anti-Semitic, there's always somebody that's next in line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but we're kind of thinking that after this first film, Mike's going to do a series of films
instead of a full ride
on hate, because any direction. Years ago, I once had an Italian fella said, he said they really hate me in the city here because I tried to get something done. They really hate me. I said, why do they hate you? He said, because I'm Italian. I said, what? I I couldn't imagine that. But then you look, Ireland and England and all that. Yeah. So there's a lot of hate to go around.
Do you think a lot of it's based on misunderstanding?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, just people don't know each other. They don't know one another.
Now, you, I want to ask you. You were years and years ago part of the Capital group that brought the Beatles to Michigan, and you know the entertainment business. You've been a band leader.
Yes. Oh, yeah, for many years.
Your wife, who I have a big crush on, was a singer.
And her stage name was Vicky Carroll.
Vicky Carroll.
Anyone out there remembers? She was actually hired by Decca Records to take Patsy Cline's place when Patsy passed away.
That famous plane crash in '63, was it? '64?
Yes, yeah. It was. Yeah. And Mike found some old kinescope tapes in the basement and some recordings, and he put it all on YouTube.
Oh, wonderful!
So it's all out there. Vicky Carroll.
Yeah, we got her with Jimmy Durante,
and she has a beehive hairdo that's about 4 feet tall.
Right. That's amazing. And you lured her away from fame. And
well, yeah, she was in town recording for a Chevrolet commercial, and my partner who was at the studio, we were songwriters and producers. He called me up. He said, Vicky Carroll's here. Her contract is expiring with Decca, and maybe we could do something. So I said, great. We set up a meeting, and then I convinced her to sign a marriage contract instead of a...
much longer.
Sitting right next to me.
I guess. But what I wanted to ask you from your professional standpoint, can you really establish a successful movie studio in a place like Detroit? Metropolitan Detroit.
It's difficult, but you can, because I've seen record producers being rejected by everyone all over the country, and then I'm going back years ago. There was Spider Turner put out a record called it was a copy of Stand By Me, where he imitated different singers singing that song. Everyone turned it down in the country. And this fellow that I went to school with didn't know the first thing about music. He didn't realize the beats were turned around and things, but he backed it, and it was a smash hit. It was a national hit, and MGM picked it up. In fact, my partner and I wrote one of the songs on the album. But MGM said, "Well, you have to put out an album, but you only have 2 weeks to do it." So day and night they were recording.
I'll bet.
So that's sometimes something small, like one of the fellows from American Airlines told us. And I had a laptop in front of me, and I was composing music for the film. And I'm figuring, with headsets on, I figure, do I realize what I'm doing? I'm in an airplane,
right?
Composing, and I got string sections, and I have horns and everything, and it's just mind-boggling.
So you can do all that, but we haven't been able to solve the basic problem of anti-Semitism and racism.
Well, Mike's he's good. So we're trying. We're going to help. We're going to help resolve that and other.
That's
issues.
Exactly.
And I just figure that we'll talk specifically about this project. Am I going to change the hearts and minds of neo-Nazis or Islamic jihadists? That would be nice, but I don't count on that.
That's right.
I'm not a gambling man, but I don't like my chances.
You're aiming at the other 99.5%.
Yeah, having lived in Oklahoma City, there were friends of mine that have not only not met a Jewish person in their life, looked at me as, "You're Jewish? What do you do?" Like,
right.
I have my laundry. I got a job. I like this girl. I hope she calls me back.
Yeah.
It's like it's not. We're just kind of people. It wasn't.
There is a lot. A friend of mine who's Jewish and who covered the Yom Kippur War went off to East Jordan, Michigan, to ask people what they thought about it. He says, "We think they're a bunch of Jews." And he said, "Well, what are Jews?" He said, "We don't rightly know, but we think they're kind of Baptist." So, but by dispelling ignorance has been shown that solves a lot of things.
Yeah, it's just we want to kind of have an introduction to Jewish daily life and culture for people that have never had an opportunity to meet a Jewish person in their entire life. I mean, a lot of the comedians that are probably their favorite people to watch on television are Jewish. They may not even have any idea.
They probably don't. Again, where can we give us the address again? If someone's listening, where can they check out your work?
Okay, so whythebleepfilm.com will get you to the trailer for the new movie. And then on dynastymedianetwork.com is our production company. And that will have more information about the Luft Gangster and Why the Bleep. And
you'll be putting out updates about the project as it goes along.
Yes,
The
and
projects.
they could like the Facebook page for the new movie would be great, and shares are always appreciated.
Wonderful.
And it's Why the Bleep Do They Hate Me on Facebook.
That's fascinating. Sheldon, any last parting words of wisdom you want to add?
I'm very excited to be involved in work on this new project. It's there's been a lot done and a lot said in all directions, but Mike's approach, I think, is going to be directed toward college students and younger people, and I think it's going to be very helpful in the big picture.
That's fascinating. The only thing I ask is that when you get around to doing the movie about why the bleep do they hate journalists, that I get to have a bedroll. Well, Mike Rott, Sheldon.
That might have to be a series.
That might have to be absolutely. I mean, that'll be your hardest one of all.
Yeah.
Mike Rott, Sheldon Rott, thanks for coming in today. Well, that's about it for this podcast, except for my signature essay. But please check out my blog, lessonberryinc.com. That's ink like an ink pen, and click the button and subscribe. And listen to our next episode soon. Tell your friends, and feel free to send me a message on Facebook or via email. This is your cheerful old curmudgeon, Jack Lessenberry. I'm off to oil my manual typewriter now, but I'll be back with a hopefully fascinating other new topic soon. Thank you very much for listening. Chances are that as you're reading this, someone is screening the magnificent movie Luft Gangster, Memoirs of a Second-Class Hero, a documentary about the amazing life of Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Jefferson, a Detroit teacher who was a pilot in the Tuskegee Airmen in World War II, survived being shot down in the prison camp, and returned to face discrimination at home in Detroit. The movie is spellbinding, heartwarming, and has been wowing audiences since it was released in 2016. Gary Sinise has plugged it. It was chosen the Best Documentary Feature by the prestigious Los Angeles International Underground Film Festival, won a similar award in Albuquerque, and was nominated for a slew of other honors. So who made the movie? Which studio produced it? Would you believe a young man named Mike Rott, an entirely self-taught filmmaker who went into business with his dad Sheldon and created the Dynasty Media Network? They aren't in Hollywood. They're headquartered in an old brick building on 9 Mile Road in Ferndale, Michigan. Mike Rott, at 39, one of the older millennials, had a career as a trainer for Apple computers out west before he decided that wasn't what he wanted to do with his life. So he came back home, rented the sprawling old Ferndale building, and started teaching himself everything he could learn about film. I never had a day of film school, he said. Yeah, well, neither did Darryl Zanuck. What Rott did have was a keen mind, a thorough knowledge of technology, and something Cecil B. DeMille never imagined: YouTube. I've taught myself from studying 1 million YouTube videos, he told me. Sheldon Rott, a producer and music director, knows something about show business. Back in the day, he was part of the team at Capitol Records who brought a young group called the Beatles to Detroit. I couldn't be more proud of him, Sheldon said of his son. Dynasty Media Network is a full-service, multimedia company. The day I visited, they were producing a financial news broadcast for a Korean TV station about to beam it to Seoul when the U.S. stock market closed. They also do everything from training films to digitizing old media for people like the Automotive Hall of Fame to providing live streaming services for various events. They'll even provide some technical and computer training if you're willing to pay for it. Filmmaking is my first love, but for right now, this is the bread and butter stuff that pays the bills, Rott said. Film projects take 2 years to get off the ground. The good news is that recently he got approved for fundraising for a film that could have really wide appeal. Why the Bleep Do They Hate Me will be a movie about anti-Semitism with Mike Rott playing a supposedly naive cultural anthropologist showing up everywhere from campuses to bars to bowling alleys trying to answer the movie title's question. Think of a sort of warmer, younger, and more athletic Michael Moore. The idea, of course, is to start with a lighthearted approach and lay the groundwork for a deeper understanding of anti-Semitic myths and propaganda. That's a timely topic, and one that could be the first in the series of similar films. You could easily imagine a Muslim, African American, and Hispanic version of Why the Bleep Do They Hate Me? Films that Rott hopes might reduce ethnic misunderstanding. Of course, self-taught guys in Ferndale aren't supposed to be able to make successful movies that reach a broad audience. Except Mike Rott already has. As a supposedly impartial journalist, am I rooting for Dynasty Media Network to succeed? Damn right. It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today on the Zing Media Network. I hope you'll be looking out for other offerings soon.